well, fortunately, we have to switch it to English, Michali.
No, that's okay.
So one quick favor, Michali, we're talking here for, and I know who you are, but please introduce yourself. Who are you?
My name is Michalis Kalaboukas. I was born and raised in Greece, and I've been in the United States for the last 15 years. I've been in the hospitality industry for 15 years. I'm a sommelier, currently based in the Finger Lakes, New York. So beautiful wine region in the East Coast, and their wines are fantastic. The region is beautiful, but I do have a sweet spot for Greek wine. So, that's how I was invited here with Sotiris. We both have a great love in Xinomavro, Assyrtiko, and very many other Greek grapes and the Greek regions of Greece. So that's me.
Wonderful. And I can say that I've known you now for a good number of years, and we hit it off because our love for and our passion for Greek wines. And Michali, we are today attempting to discuss a little bit about northern Greece, where you are from, and specifically our passion and love for Xinomavro. And tell me your thoughts about Xinomavro. Try to put it in some kind of perspective for our viewers, and I will interject and say, for me, it's there's two schools of thoughts, and I also want to hear your thoughts about this. People talk about grapes, and I like to talk about grapes within regions. I do believe in terroir. I do believe in the regionality. And Xinomavro is a good example of that. So, how would you describe Xinomavro? And give us your, as short as you can, I guess, but give us your version of it. How did you first encounter it, and what do you think of the grape and the future of the grape in particular?
Xinomavro, it's one of my favorite Greek grape varieties, probably the noble red Greek variety. If we were to compare it with another grape that is more internationally established, that would be Nebbiolo, with its high gripping tannins, high acidity, and the name, that's what the name means, xino and mavro, so the sour black grape, because it has high acidity, beautiful high tannins as well, and structured wines counterbalance each other. Elegant wines, so lower alcohol levels, food-friendly wines, and quite frankly, it does look like Nebbiolo too, see-through in the glass. Benefits from long aging as well, and I mean, we very often have Xinomavro a little too young perhaps, but 5-7 years of age is a good starting point to enjoy Xinomavro. Red fruited in profile, or in fruit profile, all about strawberries and cherries and cassis and so on. Quite leafy as well, a little tomato leaf and black olive. And that crushed stone minerality from the limestone, especially from Naoussa, that I think it's the grape expresses itself best in northern Greece. And we think of Greece very often as warm and sunny place with the islands and beautiful beaches, which part of it is, but the mainland itself, it's mountains, it's cold. We see feet of snow in the winter, mainly in the mainland and mainly in the north. But again, that's where Xinomavro comes from.
Wonderful. And as far as we'll talk a little bit about regions, we'll dive into Naoussa a little bit, and I will chime in and give you sort of my thoughts about it. But I think you described it perfectly well as a grape and what it can produce. I will say that 5 to 7 years is where it starts to basically creep out of the door as a wine, and I think it needs at least 10 years before it can start to on a good vintage, of course, to show its true characteristics, and I say over 15 years before it can really start to evolve into secondary aromas and the tannins and the acidity softening up and becoming a wine as a whole, rather than here's the fruit, here's the acidity, here's the tannins, and it definitely needs time to sort of gel as a wine or come together as a wine. can you give us a brief, like what other regions other than Naoussa do you think are noted for Xinomavro? And I'm sure you've tasted more than I have because, you know, I tend to focus, unfortunately, just on my portfolio, and that's the one I know best. So any other regions that are noteworthy other than Naoussa with Xinomavro?
Oh yeah, in Greece there are 4 PDOs or protected designation of origins for Xinomavro, 2 of which require 100% Xinomavro. One, firstly, it's Naoussa, and the other one is Amynteo on the other side of Mount Vermio. A little higher elevation, a little cooler with sandy soils, and their Xinomavro tends to be a little more acid driven with a little softer tannic profile. Whereas in Naoussa, I think expresses itself a little more tannic, a little more masculine, and more fruit structure, if you will. Another region is Goumenissa, where you see Xinomavro blended with Negoska. Negoska translates to coming from Naoussa. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The grape of Naoussa.
The grape of Naoussa.
Negoska, a nice Greek name, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, it's a Slavic, I don't know which, they say it's a dialect, Slavic dialect meaning grape from Naoussa.
Yeah.
I don't speak Slavic, but that's what the locals say.
And that is what connects us too. I mean, you see northern Greece, it's completely different than other parts of Greece. You have this kind of Slavic, if you will, or Balkan architecture, and it's really beautiful, but it's really unique to northern Greece. And you won't see that in Thessaloniki, which is in the north, but that Western Macedonia, Kozani, Naoussa, Amynteo, and so on, and Siatista, you will see those old beautiful houses.
I think you said it best when you said Balkans. I think, in essence, it's, and not many people understand the whole Balkan approach, but the Balkans is its own thing, and how the influence of these cultures over the centuries affected each other in the most positive way. First, there were cultures, I say, and then there were boundaries. So the boundaries in the nation state came way after the cultures had evolved and in a lot of interrelations, and then we cleaned it all up in a bad way.
Precisely, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the winemaking stays, the culture stays, the architecture stays, and the food stays, and that's what makes this whole area fascinating. And do you have an opinion on why Xinomavro has thrived over other grapes in northern Greece? Is there something that kind of stands out, or it just, what are your thoughts, if you have any thoughts on it?
I cannot really tell you what the reason was precisely that Xinomavro prevailed. My guess would be, like every other grape, is that it was showing better results. And we see that all over the world. And you see all those laws that the governments form to protect those regions and designations. They come after the fact. So they basically come to safeguard what this produces, what these people making for hundreds of years or thousands of years in some cases. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on why exactly prevailed and stayed, but my guess would be that it was showing better results than other grapes. Because other grapes still exist. Maybe if you make 100% Negoska, wouldn't be really fascinating wine. It would be unique, certainly, but maybe not the most fascinating, age-worthy.
Have you tasted 100% Negoska wine?
I have not have 100% Negoska, no.
I actually, years ago, years ago, could be a decade ago, could be 20 years. I lose track of time in these instances, but I remember I was at the Lamaras winery, as you enter also, right on the right-hand side, exceptional winery, when the father and the mother still managed the winemaking, especially the father, very old school. And Kostis was fairly young. He was, young teenager still. But he poured me, he made 100% Negoska. And it's so different. I mean, because you go to Naoussa, you expect to taste Naoussa Xinomavros, and then they get a Negoska, which is a little bit more weightier.
Mm-hmm.
It's inkier. It had almost an inky lead quality to it. Quite interesting. And I think, I don't know, I'm assuming it could age because it had a lot of concentration. It wasn't as tannic as the famous Xinomavro, but
Mm-hmm.
it had some age-worthy qualities. I think I drank a 1 or 2 year old Negoska. I think it wasn't that old, and he didn't have anything older, or he didn't want to open anything older for me. But my theory is always kind of reversed because um, you if you look at the Piedmont, or if you look at Bordeaux and Burgundy and all these places, one is you work with the natural ingredients. So if Sauvignon Blanc is in Loire, that's what you're going to work with. But also Cabernet Franc is in Loire, right? So why does one prevail over the other? Obviously, in my opinion, I prefer a white Sancerre than sometimes a red Cabernet Franc from the Loire, even though Loire Cabernet Francs could be stunning. Now, especially the old world is very much influenced with their regional food. So let's use outside of Greece, the Piedmont, because we always compare Nebbiolo with Xinomavro. Uh, they cook with butter, they cook with lard, they cook richer, heavier foods than, let's say, down in Puglia or in Tuscany or whatever, because they don't have olive oil, that's one. So they use more, and they have more dairy. So I think it's a slow evolution, and hence the whole notion or the philosophy of slow food movement. This is the epitome of the slow food movement, where um, you almost made the wine to go with the food. And so therefore you needed, with all that fat and all that butter, you didn't want a light, crispy white wine. You wanted, something strong, a strong red wine with acidity and tannins to go up against the fatty foods that you're cooking up in the Piedmont. Same thing in the land of Naoussa and Amynteo and Xinomavro, where they were known for herds, for having their sheep, their livestock, and I think even cows, but also a lot of livestock. So, and they were cooking in a way they didn't have the olive oil that, let's say, Crete or the Peloponnese has. So they needed these kind of um, wines to go up against the food. And if you go to Naoussa, they sort of, let's say, are we going to drink wine, or are we going to drink this white stuff? They to them, it's like white wine. It's like, oh my God, I can't even touch this stuff. We drink wine. That's wine is Xinomavro, is red wine. It's big red wine, and that's what I've seen, this evolution of sort of almost Darwinian in a way. Almost like, I'm sure there was in all these regions. I'm sure in Santorini, for example, there is red wines. But why did Acerbico prevail? They were seafood eaters, a minimalistic diet. So you can't have a mavro tragano, that big tannic. You can make it, and it's interesting. But you're going to drink your white Acerbico in the Cyclades. In the north, you're going to have your Xinomavro because, hey, we're stews and pites and a lot of meat, and of course the spices from Anatolia, so the eastern spices, and you know how the northern Greek cuisine has more cinnamon. They use cumin, they use cardamom, more so than we do where I come from in the south. So interesting nuances that allow, let's say, Xinomavro to shine. I think that's very important. That's at least my opinion. And of course, that's sort of the theory that I have. And again, Xinomavro is one of those blessed. I would go as far as consider it a noble grape, and it having true potential to really, we're on the onset of new winemakers coming in and really taking Xinomavro to the next level, having the economic wherewithal and the knowledge to elevate Xinomavro even further higher. And that's just, I could be wrong.
Indeed, I firmly believe Xinomavro can stand and should be in the international market. It's one of those grapes that it's just fantastic. Age-worthy, goes great with those richer meaty dishes, um, um, stews, all this sort of preparations, and the wines are just great. They're fantastic. The same way as Assyrtiko is fantastic, and it's getting more and more well known in the international market because it's a great wine, the bright acidity, the fresh, minerally driven wines, and their wines are just incredible. And I think we also have to start to touch a little on the historic standpoint, how Greece kind of left behind from the rest of the developed world, and especially in winemaking. Of course, we had First World War. Second one, we had the Ottoman occupation for 400 years. Then that ends. 80 years later, you got the First World War. After that, you got the Second World War. You got a civil war. You have dictatorship up until the 70s.
The 20th century was on the bloody side. You would
yeah. I mean, up until the 70s, you couldn't really create wine to sell in the international market. It didn't exist. The town next to you didn't exist.
Yes.
Let alone the international market. But now you start seeing a lot of those people who went abroad and studied in their back, like Gero Vasiliou and Paraskevopoulos, and they came back and they started creating incredible wines and really well made with great knowledge. And we see that all over. And the newer generation now kind of takes the baton from them in a way and start focusing on those indigenous grape varieties. But this is what I think Greece is about. They do make Merlot and Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and so on. But I think where we can make our mark on in the international market, it's those big grape varieties.
So, Michele, I'm going to put you on the spot here and speaking with Xinomavro. And I want to hold, what are your favorite standout producers or producers that you follow within the world of Xinomavro and Naoussa, Amynteo, Goumenissa, so on and so forth?
Oh, there's a lot of producers that I really love, and I really enjoy trying new wines whenever I can find them. Kyriani, Ramnista Xinomavro, I think it's a classic, beautiful Naoussa Xinomavro. Karidas makes fantastic wines. Argatia, it's one of the newer ones that I was introduced to by you, and I think Harula makes fantastic wines. I had the Lamara recently, which I've never had before. My family brought me 2 bottles and suitcase imports, and I had a couple of bottles, and I really
I know where you can get it. You don't have to go through. I know where I can help you. I'm not the importer, but I know where to buy because I buy it too and I drink it already.
Okay, yeah.
Here, stay.
Yeah, well, upstate is a little harder for me to get those wines, but I'll hold you into that. Then in Amynteo, of course, Alpha State and Karanikas, I think what springs to mind. In Rapsani, I think we didn't talk about Rapsani in Mount Olympus. Of course, there are field blends, and this is kind of what the growers had again. Xinomavro, Krasato, Stavroto. I think Chandal is there, has holdings and makes fantastic wines. I work with some of those wines from the mid 2000s, and they were just fantastic.
Very well.
And the bang for your buck, it was just outstanding. The value you were getting for this kind of wines, and was really incredible. Dugos in Rapsani as well does great work there. Then in Goumenissa, Hadjivaritis, and
they are exceptional wines. Exceptional. Hadjivaritis makes a beautiful Goumenissa wine, I have to say.
Yeah, and beautiful people.
Oh yes,
beautiful people.
I've met the parents. I had actually coffee somehow with the mother in Thessaloniki, and she's an extremely interesting, educated woman. I think she's a professor. the Thessaloniki University or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they were in a winemaking family. They just decided to make wine, and they brought a they. I think they're from Goumenissa originally,
Yes.
and they wanted to make wine in Goumenissa, and they tried to find land where they could grow those grapes, and I think they make really good job.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have to mention the Tatsi brothers,
Yeah.
which are kind of like if you have Hadzivariti, they're on one side of the Goumenissa winemaking philosophy, and Tatsi brothers are, I call them the gurus. They're out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have the kind of more modern wine style, and then you get the I don't want to call it hipster, but a little more of that low intervention
Yeah,
winemaking approach and pushing the envelope
they,
a little too,
indeed,
which I
indeed.
really enjoy that too. And not only reds, and a lot of different wines and a lot of different regions.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. Sometimes that clean modern wine fits your palate and your where you're eating and the mood, and sometimes you want that a little funky, unique wine you want to play with.
Well, I sort of like this, and what I've noticed in the north in particular is an increase in a lot of young blood entering, whether it's Hadzivariti, and I think they definitely have a daughter, but the children are taking over. Taralas, the same thing. The children are taking over. Idalamaras, Costis has done light years, kind of taking over from his father and really pushing the envelope as well. You see that Markovitis is another example where the son took over, and Petros, but Petros now, Petros is Petros is my age. We've been around. Caridas, that is
Mm-hmm.
been around forever, but still kind of showing that when I first went to Naoussa, it might have like I was tasting Naoussa wines in my college days in the early 90s, and I fell in love with Xinomavro. And then, when I really got into the wine world and learning more about Greek wines, I went to Naoussa, and I could have been 98 the first time I was there, 97 maybe. And to see that, when I was there, I was tasting, let's say, I would say there was 5 to 8 serious winemakers in Naoussa. Everybody was making wine, but serious, like smaller, making good wine. Um, Now I would say there's approaching 20, and they're all in their late 20s, early 30s,
Mm-hmm.
and that is just, to me, that is so promising that it's expanding. They're taking their trade seriously. They have a lot to learn. I can speak like an old timer. They have a lot to learn as far as winemaking. I come from the school of traditional winemaking, so I always believe in traditional thought and traditional process. It's not, new ideas are always great and needed, and there's a reason why a certain wine region makes a style of wine at this particular moment in time in history, and the process to change it is needed, and it should be a slow process. Too
Mm-hmm.
much revolutionary ideas are, in my opinion, they don't last. They're not here for the long haul. And wine is not a fad. It's based on tradition and authenticity, and we have to sort of adhere to that.
Yeah.
I also, oh, go ahead, please.
No, I agree on that. I want to touch a little on the traditional standpoint of winemaking, and I agree with that. Yes, you use those modern techniques and the knowledge you have acquired, and how science has evolved, and you can use that to your advantage. And I think it's really fascinating when you can have those two worlds coexist, and makes those beautiful products that are a little more. Uh, Also, you can work with the results a little easier than you would, let's say, 100 years ago.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, and what I find, especially in the north, um, is this sort of course, there's always in these regions competition. There's always egos and competition, and beyond that, what I find is a huge sense of camaraderie and collaboration. They know that they're in this together, and that they know if one producer does extremely well, the others will follow. And it's almost this healthy, if I can call it healthy competition.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that culture, that way of thinking, and this is where we have to pay homage to somebody like Yanis Boutaris, who was such a visionary, that he realized that one winery, the Boutari winery that we know very well, could not elevate a region. You cannot create one region with one winery. So as the story goes, and I've heard this from Caridad, Mr. Caridad, the father of Petros Caridas, Kirkochos as we call him, and others, Galamara and others who were Yanni Boutari used to buy grapes from these farmers and push them, encourage them, depending on the vineyard site, to create their own wines. Caridas is a prime example of that because he was in the region, the sub-region of Gastra. You've been to the winery, no? Have you?
Not to Kokinos, excuse me, not to Caridas. I've been to Kiriani, but not in Yanakohori, but not.
Well, from the Ramista vineyards, you could see Caridas. He's the other hill right across. Beautiful southeastern exposing vineyards, exceptional vineyard site. And Yanni Boutari pushed Mr. Caridas to make his own wines in the 80s. And that he was the catalyst to really ignite sort of this young winemakers making Xinomavro wine in Naoussa, and it's taking off now, and we are witnessing something quite interesting, quite historical. So it's fascinating to see this and to be part of it, and maybe that's what made me glue so much to the region of Naoussa. I think it's such a fun place to visit too.
And I think Yanis, the Greek wine owes a lot to Yanis Boutaris. I was not aware of the that incident, how he encouraged other producers to make wine, but I can tell you that he was amongst the first to start making serious wine, to be able to export it in the international market. And then Santorini owes him a lot too.
Oh yes.
He invested in Santorini, and he got and he gave to the world Hadzidakis as well.
Well, I'm going to speak like an old timer now. So you have Hadzidakis. Who started in Santorini? These names.
Hadzidakis was Yanis Boutaris' winemaker, wasn't he?
Stavroto too.
Oh wow!
And I also believe Angelos Iatridis as well, amongst many others.
Yeah, so I mean, and Angelos, of course, kind of holds the flag for Amynteo.
Yeah, so you have all these young winemakers under the supervision and visionary guidance of Yanis Boutaris in Santorini. And I think in a way that's why we had this explosion of Santorini really making great wines and actually just to see the interaction, because when I first went to Santorini, I went to visit Argyros, and I walk into Argyros's, let's call it a winery. It was his backyard, which is tiny little thing. Now it's different. And I walk in, and it's Yanis Argyros with Yanis Paraskevopoulos chatting away and having coffee. And I'm like, I know Paraskevopoulos, I know that guy. And it was the most amazing experience of one of the many great experiences I had. So Yanis Argyros taught. He was amazing in making the Visanto wine. Argyros's Visantos were out of this world. I still have a bottle which he gave me. He's passed away since. Was it 74 Visanto? I think I'm not. If I ever open it, I'm just going to pour it over ice cream. I don't think it's that kind of a wine. It's so viscous. It's ridiculous. I can't wait one day to open it up, but it can go on forever.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's the beauty of these regions, and more discussions to be had, Michali. I have to wrap it up slowly, and we επιτρέπεις.
Cool, yeah.
Eh, Thank you for your time. If that and I hope we continue this conversation if that's okay with you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Maybe we can bring in a third party and we could really make it maybe we could invite Dionisi or Manusakis or something
Mhm.
or even Lefteris. But
Yeah. I haven't seen any of these guys in a while, and it would be fascinating.
that could be a good excuse. So I'll work on that. But Michali, thank you very much. It's always
Thank
a
you, Sotirimu.